The morning sun had barely risen when Elara stepped into the bustling marketplace, her worn shoes scraping softly against the uneven stones as the noise of bargaining voices wrapped around her like a storm she could not escape. She had not eaten properly in 2 days, but hunger was something she had learned to silence. What she could not silence was her pride. She stopped at every shop, every stall, every doorway where labor might be needed, her voice steady yet quiet as she asked the same question again and again. "Do you need help?" Most people barely looked at her, some waved her away, and a few offered coins instead of work, which she refused every single time. She did not want pity. She wanted dignity. By noon, exhaustion had begun to creep into her bones, but she refused to sit down, as if resting would mean accepting defeat. It was then that she reached the iron gates of a large estate on the edge of the town, a place whispered about as belonging to a man who had more wealth than compassion. Still she knocked. When the gate opened, she found herself face to face with Adrian Hale, a man whose sharp eyes seemed to measure everything in silence. She spoke before fear could take over. She didn't ask for money, nor sympathy, only work. Adrian studied her longer than anyone else had that day, noticing not just her worn clothes, but the strength in the way she stood. Without a word, he stepped aside and told her to follow him. She didn't realize it then, but that single step into the estate would begin to unravel everything she thought. She knew about survival, kindness, and the quiet ways life changes when you least expect it. Elara expected harsh instructions, long hours and cold indifference. But what she found inside the estate unsettled her more than cruelty ever could. Adrian assigned her simple tasks at first, cleaning the garden paths, organizing storage rooms, helping in the kitchen, but he never spoke down to her, never raised his voice, and most confusing of all, he never treated her like she was invisible. Meals were left for her without comment, fresh water always within reach, and tools that were sturdy instead of broken. It was not charity, yet it felt like something more than employment. Days turned into a rhythm she had not known in years, one where she could work without constantly defending her worth. Still, Elara kept her distance, her guard firmly in place, because kindness had always come with a cost in her past. Meanwhile, Adrian watched from afar, noticing how she worked harder than anyone else, how she refused help even when her hands trembled from fatigue, and how she carried herself like someone who had lost everything but refused to admit it. Slowly, their conversations grew from brief instructions to quiet exchanges about weather, then to fragments of personal truths neither intended to share. Adrian revealed little, but his silences spoke of loneliness. Elara revealed even less, but her eyes carried stories of survival. What neither of them realized was that something fragile had begun to form. Not love, not yet, but a quiet understanding built on respect rather than need. And in that space, something dangerous began to grow. Trust. Just as Elara began to feel a sense of stability, the past she had worked so hard to escape found her again. One evening, as shadows stretched across the estate, a man arrived at the gates, a man who knew her name, her history, and the life she had left behind. He demanded money, claiming debts she had never truly owed, threatening to expose lies that could ruin her chance at starting over. Fear returned like a storm, shaking the strength she had built day by day. She tried to handle it alone, slipping back into old habits of silence and sacrifice, even considering leaving the estate to protect the fragile life she had found. But Adrian noticed. He always did. When he confronted her, she resisted at first, insisting it was her problem, her burden, but for the first time, someone refused to let her carry it alone. Adrian stood between her and the man from her past, not with violence, but with a calm authority that made it clear she was no longer alone in the world. The confrontation ended, but its impact lingered. For Elara, it was the first time someone had chosen to stand beside her without expecting anything in return. For Adrian, it was the moment he realized that what he felt was no longer just concern, it was something deeper, something that made him willing to protect her not out of duty, but because her presence had quietly changed his life. And for both of them, it marked the beginning of a truth neither could ignore any longer. The days that followed carried a different weight, one filled with unspoken emotions and the quiet realization that neither of them was the same person they had been before they met. Elara no longer felt like a stranger in the estate. It had become a place where her presence mattered, where her work was valued, and where her silence was understood rather than judged. Adrian, once a man who lived behind walls built of routine and distance, found himself seeking her out, drawn to the calm strength she carried. Yet both hesitated, unsure whether crossing the line between employer and something more would shatter what they had built. It was Elara who finally broke that silence, not with grand words, but with honesty. She reminded him that she had only asked for work, nothing more. Adrian's response was simple, yet it carried the weight of everything they had been through. He told her that sometimes life gives more than what we ask for, not as charity, but as something earned through resilience and courage. In that moment, the distance between them disappeared. What began as a request for work had grown into something far greater, a connection built not on need, but on mutual respect, trust, and the quiet understanding of two people who had learned to survive alone but found something stronger together. And as the sun set over the estate, casting golden light across the path where Elara had first walked in as a stranger, she realized something she had never allowed herself to believe before. She had not only found work, she had found a place to belong,